Okay. So in the moment, we can click here. The team is open, so you can mute it. Even you, if you want, turn off your camera. But so see you in a few moments. Perfect. Thank you so much, Mr. Richard.
Thank you. I wanted to say thank you. I realized I was muted. Want to thank you also for all the help. Thank you.
Don't worry, Mr. Archer. We are here to help you.
Good morning, everyone. We're about to start out this meeting, and on behalf of the ICLAC the Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean, it is a pleasure to welcome you to this Indian LAC Emerging Partners in a Shifting Global Economy Seminar. My name is Sergio Ribeiro, and throughout this session, I will be pleased to be the master of ceremony. Now receive the greetings from the authorities who are presented this morning, the representatives of the diplomatic corps, the colleagues of the United Nations system, the specialists of the academia, the leaders of the private sectors, and all who are gathered together here in the room and virtually participating from different countries in Latin America and the Caribbean, India, and other countries. Please let me share two pieces of information, practical information, before starting. First of all, this um, session is being translated into English and Spanish and is available for everyone who would like to follow this session in a different language. And this seminar is being broadcast live through the official platforms of ECLAC in order to facilitate access to a wider audience. At the same time, I would like to remind you that all the information connected to the seminar will be later available in our website. Taking into account these remarks, we would like to thank you for your presence here and your participation, and we will formally start our working session. To open this seminar, it is an honor to invite Mr. Jose Manuel uh, Salazar Sirinash, the Executive Secretary of ICLAC, to give his welcoming words. So thank you very much. Thank you and welcome everyone. Distinguished Mrs. I believe Asha Yoshi, Ambassador of India in Chile, representatives of the diplomatic corps, my colleagues from the academia and the private sector, dear friends. It is a great honor for me to warmly welcome you to the headquarters of ICLAC, United Nations Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean of the United Nations, to inaugurate this international seminar on economic relations between India and our region in a global context that is transforming. I would like to thank the delegations present at the Embassy of India in Chile for their collaboration, to the panelists and commentators who are joining us from India, Latin America, and the Caribbean, and to those who are tuning in through the various virtual platforms. More than 10 years have passed since the last high-level event dedicated to India at ECLAC. Resuming this dialogue today is not a symbolic gesture. It reflects our commitment to supporting the countries in the region into interpreting and managing the various historical cycles, shedding light on options and potentialities. We are in a period marked by profound systemic transformations, rapid technological advances, and new investments of trade geographies, the reorganization of production chains, and an international environment in which interdependence is not longer a guarantee of stability, but is increasingly becoming an instrument of strategic competition. As a result, the new global landscape is refining the opportunity, the risk, and the um, action frameworks for all the developing countries. In Latin America and the Caribbean, this global situation overlaps with long-standing international constraints and gaps. Between 2040 and 23, the region went through what we called a second lost decade, during which it achieved average annual growth of just 0.9%. This is not minor detail, not does it speak only economic issues, but with this reality, it's very difficult to reduce poverty and informality, generate quality jobs, expand the fiscal space, and finance the productive social and environmental investments that development requires. Furthermore, this set of limitations reduces our ability to participate and assertively influence the reconfiguration of the global economy. Therefore, the central theme of this seminar is the need to rethink our international integration with a forwarding looking vision. Integration with the world must be managed intelligently. That is, as a policy instrument to stimulate growth and development, to drive productive transformation, to leverage the region's many assets, and to build mutually beneficial relationships with an increasing number of trading and economic partners. The importance of diversifying the trade investment in terms of product sectors and trading partners is well established and is now more important than ever. It is precisely on this point that the relationship with India takes on special relevance. India is now one of the most dynamic emerging economies, with a GDP of close to 3.7 trillion dollars and a population of over 1.4 billion people. Is currently the fifth largest economy in the world, with the strong projections of reaching third place by 2030. Its sustained growth over 6% over the last decade is supported by a strategy of industrial modernization, a digital economy that already accounts for nearly 10% of the GDP, and a technological ecosystem capable of generating innovation in fintech, advanced manufacturing, renewable energy, and global services. The transformation process being driven by India can provide valuable lessons for our region. As Mr. Pedish Royal said, whom I recently had the opportunity to meet in Berlin, said, history reminds us that great economies are not built in calm waters, they are built on turbulent seas. End of the quote. This reflection underscored the importance of strengthening the resilience and strategic clarity demanded by the current international context. For Latin America and the Caribbean, economic relations with India have gained momentum, but they are far from reflecting their potential. Although bilateral trade is approaching $50 billion, it continues to be concentrated in a small number of products and has a limited presence in higher value added goods and services. However, ongoing trade negotiations such as CEPA with Chile and FTA with Peru and the expansion of the India Mercosur agreement confirm a growing interest and the expanding agenda. We are organizing this seminar at an opportune moment. ECLAC has been arguing that the region needs to complement its traditional economic ties with a broader strategy of diversification towards emerging economies such as India, the Gulf countries, Asian, and Africa. This proposal does not diminish the importance of our main partners, such as the United States, China, the European Union, or the countries in the region itself, with whom we maintain a strong relations. Rather, it seeks to complement this architecture with new areas of cooperation that will allow the region to act more nimbly in a more competitive global arena. It is about building resilience and forward-looking capacity, expanding our productive base, taking advantage of the commercial and technological complementarities, and with all of this, adding much-needed engines of growth and ways to reduce exposure to external shocks that entail high costs for our economies and societies. And of course, it is also about strengthening ties of friendship and knowledge with one of the great countries of the global south, with a civilization that is unique among the great civilizations of the world. Friends, the seminar we are inaugurating today was designed to precisely to move in this direction. Beyond describing the potential of the relationship, we aspire to examine with rigor and foresight what forms of cooperations are mutually beneficial and how we can take full advantage of these opportunities. Through this day, we invite you to reflect collectively on some central questions to guide a new agenda for cooperation. For example, what place can India occupy in the strategy for the international integration of Latin America and the Caribbean in this changing global economy? In which sectors are the most obvious complementarities found, and what gaps must be closed to promote them? How can we strengthen institutional capacity in economic intelligence and public-private dialogue to accompany this rapprochement? what role can trade agreements such as those currently under uh, negotiation play in scaling up the relationship toward greater technological and productive cooperation? In the approach of this seminar, we have sought to combine a macro view of the position of India and our region in the global economy in the sectoral and policy discussions for productive transformation. We will have the opportunity to hear analysis from Latin America and the Caribbean, and all the perspectives from the private sector and the academic, which are key players in this subject. Before concluding, allow me to emphasize a conviction that underpins our work at ICLAC in an economy and global order characterized by intense industrial and technological rivalry, intermentalization and competition. Countries and regions that combine resilience, foresight, and proactivity will be those with the best chances to improving their development trajectory. They were convinced, fully convinced of this point, and this is translated in a series of priorities in terms of the institutional reinforcing, the foresight thinking, and beforehand we spoke of the market intelligence, but today is rather technology intelligence related to the industrial technologies, the strategies entailed in each one of the major trade partners. The future of relationships between India and the region will depend on our ability to transform spaces such as these into inputs and public policies, business alliances, public-private projects, and sustainable cooperation mechanisms. May this seminar be the starting point to comparing diagnosis, exchanging experiences, identifying convergences, and moving toward a shared roadmap. And I would like to reiterate my thanks to the ambassador for welcoming this initiative as well as this project. And we sincerely expect that this is the beginning of a series of activities in the future where we'll be able to facilitate this strategic relationship that is so important. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you so much, Secretary. Now, we are going to listen from Her Excellency, Madam Abhilasha Joshi, Ambassador of India to Chile.
Buenos dias, good morning, and namaste. Excellency, Senor Jose Manuel Salazar Zirinach, Executive Director of ECLAC, Excellencies and representatives from the diplomatic corps, distinguished panelists, guests, ladies and gentlemen. I am honored to join you at ECLAC's International Seminar on India, Latin America, and the Caribbean, emerging partners in a shifting global economy. I thank the organizers for convening this timely dialogue. The world economy is indeed undergoing profound shifts from technological revolutions to reconfigured supply chains and a renewed focus on sustainability. In this changing landscape, India and the Latin American and Caribbean region are discovering new avenues for cooperation. Friends, India and Chile enjoy a warm, multifaceted partnership built on mutual respect and shared values. As vibrant democracies committed to inclusive development and multilateralism, our countries have much in common. In recent years, our political engagement has intensified. We recall the successful state visit of President of India, Sri Ramnath Kovind, to Chile in 2019, and the recent state visit of President Gabriel Boric to India in April this year, a historic milestone that reaffirmed our close friendship. During that visit, leaders on both sides hailed trade and commerce as a strong pillar of the relationship and launched negotiations for a comprehensive economic partnership agreement, or CEPA, to unlock our full potential. Prior to this visit, our foreign ministers had chaired the Joint Commission meeting in August 2024 and recently concluded the 9th India-Chile Foreign Office consultations, reinvigorating our growing ties. Our economic relationship has grown steadily and holds immense potential. Chile is India's natural partner in South America, a nation rich in resources and innovation, and a gateway for us to the region. Bilateral trade between India and Chile has risen significantly, reaching nearly $3.8 billion in 24-25. This marks a substantial jump from the previous year, driven especially by Chile's exports of minerals to India. In fact, minerals such as copper and lithium made up more than 1.7 billion US dollars of Chile's exports to India last year. Resources that are critical for India's growing electronics, electric vehicles, and renewable energy sectors. On the other hand, Indian exports to Chile, around 1.24 billion US dollars, include automobiles, pharmaceuticals, textiles, and engineering goods. There is ample room to diversify this trade basket. Indian companies are increasingly interested in Chile's dynamic market, and Chilean companies likewise see opportunity in India's vast consumer base. Indian companies are also exploring investment partnerships in sectors like mining, IT services, and renewable energy. These trends confirm that our economic ties are on the upswing. Friends, as a centerpiece of our enhanced engagement in the ongoing negotiations of the CEPA, building on our existing PTA, which got expanded in 2017, the CEPA aims to be a modern, broad-based free trade pact to cover not only goods, but also digital services, investment promotion, cooperation in micro, small, and medium enterprises, critical minerals, ease of mobility for professionals and business persons, among other areas. In May 2025, our two governments signed the terms of reference for CEPA negotiations, formally kicking off this ambitious endeavor. As you all would be aware, just last week, on 5th December 2025, India and Chile concluded the fourth round of CEPA negotiations in New Delhi, making substantial progress across various chapters. Both sides are committed to conclude the CEPA in a timely manner, and we are optimistic that a comprehensive and mutually beneficial CEPA will boost bilateral trade, deepen economic cooperation, enhance market access, and create new opportunities for businesses in both our countries. India has robust relations also across the Latin America and Caribbean region. With its 600 million people and abundant resources, the LAC region is vital to India's quest for diversified partnerships in a multipolar world. Bilateral trade between India and LAC region is approaching $50 billion, still much below the potential, a figure that is growing rapidly and reflects the complementarity of our economies. Indian companies have made an aggregate investment of over 15 billion US dollars in this region, in sectors ranging from energy and mining to pharmaceuticals and IT services, generating substantial employment opportunities. We are deepening these ties on multiple fronts, as alongside Chile, India is also negotiating FTA with Peru, and there has been talk of expanding the India-Mercosur preferential trade agreement. These initiatives signal our interest to institutionalize trade links with key Latin American economies. They will help unlock new markets for both sides. Similarly, India has also intensified political outreach to this region. In recent years, there have been several high-level visits and dialogues, including meetings at the United Nations and G20 forums between Indian leaders and counterparts from Brazil, Mexico, Argentina, Cuba, and others. Our External Affairs Minister, our Minister of State for External Affairs, and Commerce Minister have each toured the LAC countries, engaging on issues of trade, energy, climate change, and development cooperation. The India-LAC Business Conclave, like the recently concluded 10th CII India Conclave in Delhi in March 2025, have provided platforms for businesses to forge connections and for policymakers to streamline cooperation. All these efforts underscore that India views LAC as a priority region for collaboration. Friends, as fellow developing countries, LAC is a focus of India's South-South cooperation. India has extended lines of credit or soft loans for projects in solar energy and IT in the Caribbean region. We have offered capacity building and training programs to hundreds of LAC officials and students under our ITEC, or the Indian Technical and Economic Cooperation Program, and the Indian Council for Cultural Relations scholarships. During the COVID-19 pandemic, India supplied Made in India vaccines to many countries in the Latin America and Caribbean as part of our Vaccine Maitri initiative, reflecting solidarity in times of need. Culturally, the bonds are growing, where Indian traditional systems of medicine such as yoga, Ayurveda, Indian philosophy, along with Indian music, dances, cuisine, and Bollywood, have found enthusiastic audiences in Latin America. And there is a vibrant Indian diaspora contributing to LAC societies. But why is this partnership important for India and Chile, or India and the Latin America and Caribbean region? Allow me to highlight the transformative journey India has undergone in the past decade. This context is important because India's domestic progress underpins what we can offer as a partner not only to Chile but also to other countries in the region. In just over a decade, India has emerged as one of the world's fastest growing major economies, a laboratory for technological innovation, and a champion of sustainable development. Talk about our economy was also already mentioned by Executive Secretary. We are now the fourth largest economy globally. We have maintained an average growth of over 6% per year for the past decade. And in the last quarter, from July to September 2025, India recorded 8.2% GDP growth, the fastest pace in 6 quarters, reaffirming India as the world's fastest growing major economy. This sustained growth is projected to continue, with India on track to become the third largest economy before 2030. India's digital public infrastructure, with over 1.3 billion individual unique digital ID cards or Aadhaar, and our universal digital payments network, have transformed the governance and economic landscape, enabling financial inclusion and swift service delivery. Nearly 40% of the world's digital transactions take place in India. The Unified Payments Interface, or UPI, has transformed digital payment system and emerged as a preferred mode of transaction because of its attractive, user-friendly, and secure features. India's digital economy already accounts for nearly 10% of our GDP. Digital cooperation through digital public goods, whether in fintech, e-learning, or e-governance, can be a fruitful new pillar of cooperation for this region. Friends, women-led development has been another cornerstone of India's growth. India's female workforce participation nearly doubled from 22% in 2017-2018 to over 40% in 23-24. Over 15 million women have joined the formal workforce in the past 7 years. We have significantly increased gender-focused budgeting and launched programs that have provided millions of women with bank accounts, loans, skills training, and leadership opportunities. These are experiences that we would be happy to share with our partners in LATAM region. Similarly, India's prowess in space sciences is well known. The Indian Space Research Organization, or ISRO, has achieved low-cost, high-impact successes from the Mars Orbiter mission to the recent Chandrayaan-3 mission, which in August 2023 made India the first country to land a spacecraft near the moon's south pole. This feat, hailed as India's biggest scientific achievement, opens new frontiers for lunar science and inspires developing nations that the sky is not the limit. We have also launched satellites for several friendly countries, including the Suchai-1 satellite for Chile. India's satellite data sharing benefiting agriculture, weather forecasting, and communications is an important tool for the common good. There is also immense scope for collaboration in technology and innovation, for instance, connecting Chile's advanced research in astronomy with India's strengths in space science. Meanwhile, India's startup ecosystem is now the third largest in the world, with 100+ unicorns across e-commerce, fintech, biotech, and more. This startup culture is something we hope to connect with Chile's own thriving startup program, encouraging partnerships between our tech hubs, venture funds, and universities. Another key area of consonance is India's growth in renewable energy. In the last decade, India has expanded its renewable energy capacity to around 237 gigawatt of renewables, including solar, wind, and hydro. This accounts for over 50% of our installed power capacity, a target achieved 5 years ahead of schedule, and we are on course to reach 500 gigawatt of non-fossil fuel capacity by 2030. We have also launched an ambitious national green hydrogen mission, aiming to produce 5 million tons of green hydrogen annually by 2030, envisioning India as a future global hub for green hydrogen and its derivatives. In line with this, the government recently allocated incentives leading to 862,000 tons per year of green hydrogen production capacity being set up by the private sector. These efforts not only contribute to global climate goals, but also open new avenues for collaboration with like-minded partner countries and with the private sector. Most importantly, India has taken on an active leadership role in global cooperation for development and innovation, amply visible during our G20 presidency in 2023. India has launched several international initiatives like the Global Biofuels Alliance, the International Solar Alliance, the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, all underlining our belief in Vasudev Kutumbakam, or that the world is one family. In the realm of technology governance, too, India is stepping up. Early next year, in February 2026, we will be hosting the AI Impact Summit in New Delhi. This major global gathering, announced by Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi, will convene governments, experts, and industry to discuss how artificial intelligence can be harnessed for social good in healthcare, education, agriculture, climate, and governance. This summit aligns with India's vision of responsible and inclusive AI and will focus on practical cooperation, specifically benefiting the global south. We welcome Chile and all other partners in LATAM region to participate in this conversation on emerging technologies. It is another example of our commitment to leading with ideas and innovation on the global stage. Friends, for India and Latin America and Caribbean, although once distant, we must now work closer together in this interconnected world. As we look ahead, our cooperation is poised to contribute to what ECLAC has aptly called productive transformation, sustainable development, and deeper cooperation. However, logistical challenges, connectivity, and ease of movement must be addressed rapidly to unlock the full potential of our relations. In this journey of bringing our regions closer, multilateral forums such as ECLAC have a crucial role in providing analytical insights and platforms for dialogue that can guide our governments and businesses. I applaud your initiative in hosting this seminar and asking the right questions of how to bring our two regions closer together. To conclude, India's message to Chile and our friends in LATAM is one of partnership, ambition, and shared prosperity. We see you not as distant markets, but as partners in development. The India Chile relationship stands as a shining example of what is possible between two countries, distant in geography, but similar in spirit, leveraging our strengths to create mutual gain. As the global economy shifts, emerging partnerships like ours will be key to shaping a more multipolar, equitable world order. I am confident that in the coming years, we will witness an India Latin America Caribbean partnership that is broader, deeper, and more impactful than ever before. Thank you very much. Muchas gracias. Let us work together to ensure that the partnership between all our countries truly thrives in the shifting global economy, delivering prosperity and sustainable progress for all our peoples. Thank you.
Thank you very much, the Ambassador of India in Chile. And we will start now our first session of today. This session will be moderated by Dr. Raquel Chanto, Chief of Staff of the Office of the Executive Secretary. She's a doctor in political science in Oxford. She has a master's degree at the University of Princeton, and she is a lawyer of the University of Costa Rica, has been advisor in the Republic of Costa Rica in the Secretariat of Political Affairs at the OEA, and she has been also an advisor for the trade affairs of Costa Rica. It's an honor to have you as a speaker. Thank you, Sergio. Good morning, everyone. For me, it's an honor to start out this international session, and this is a session of India-LAC relations in the shifting global economy context, and an economy that is in transition. As we know, this is convening us when the dynamics, international dynamics, are going through a profound reconfiguration. There are new geographies for trade and for investment, and there are fragmented value chains, the technological chains that are accelerated, and also an instrumentalization of the interdependence, the political criteria that are influencing the decisions that at a period of time before where badly governed ID um, s- uh, search of efficiency. And this is eroding the preceding balances. Although they were very weak at that time, we're going, however, into a new reconfiguration, and the changes are changing the balances. That is what they do. And also changing the critical circumstances where many avenues are open, but the avenue that we choose have increasing returns, and therefore it's very difficult to revert the pathway. And this is very important to take into account at a point of in time where it is very difficult to be adrift. This is very important that the region is a, able to choose the roadmap to follow. And we have here the relationship with India, with this economy that is particularly dynamic in a world where this is a rare good. And this is open a key space to promote diversification in our region and to rethink cooperation to come up with the productive opportunities for the countries in the region. In this session, we are behind a schedule now, I should say, so we'll try to be efficient in the management of time. We will be speaking in this session for 1 hour and 15 minutes, more or less, and it will be developed in three phases where we will have an introductory presentation and then a panel with the comments associated, and then we'll have a QA session. I will to introduce you to we have here. First of all, we have the participation of Mr. Hari Isacg, if I say it correctly, who is a visiting fellow of the Observer Research Foundation and co-founder of the Concilium Group in India. He has worked with the government of Panama, with the UNDP, with the Industry Association in India, and his work is centered in India and the energy security. He has worked with WH and other entities, and his analysis has been published in Deutsche Welle, the BBC, and others. And he has given also conferences in the Foreign Affairs Service of India, Getúlio Vargas in Brazil and Nuremberg. He has a bachelor degree in communications in Bombay and also at the Stanford University. We also have as commenters Mrs. Loreto Leighton, the Executive Director of Chilean Pacific Foundation, Mr. Ignacio Bartesagui, Director of the Institute of International Business, Catholic University of Uruguay, and Mariana Aparicio, Center for International Relations in the National Autonomous University of Mexico. With no further ado, I will give the floor now to Mr. Harry for his presentation.
Gusto.
Well, thank you, and it's a pleasure to be here in Chile, and this is the third time that I am in Chile this year. And I'm very happy that ICLAC is paying attention to India closely now. This is something that we can institutionalize. I will, I will start speaking about people and numbers, figures. First of all, we can see here on the screen four pictures. They These pictures are four of high rank authorities visits. So one to Argentina, Brazil, and Chile, and the other one is the Vice President of Brazil, who went to India in October this year. The four visits do have a meaning rather than being just a visit. In this region, we like to speak of waves. We have a wave of left countries, left wing, sorry, left wing parties, and this is the second wave of reapproachment that we're seeing between India and Latin America. The first one was between 2003 and 2008, and now we're undergoing the second wave that just started maybe last year or even in 2023. And how long it will persist, we don't know. The first time I used this map was 10 years ago. I used this map when I was doing my master degree in Latin American studies. And the interesting thing is that every time I show this map, I have different comments. And a comment that someone made and was very appealing is that, first of all, this map shows the population in the different Latin American countries compared to the population of the different states in India. And why I'm showing this map? Because India cannot be understood as a country. All the countries are not the same. Monaco, for example, is a country, isn't it? Is a state, rather. Lesotho is a country. India is a country. All the countries have their peculiarities. In India, I was born in the southernmost state where we show Argentina, Venezuela. This called Tamilado. When I go to the nearby state, I do not understand the language. My wife and I are from different states in India, and at home we don't speak an Indian language, but we rather speak English. India is a very complicated country. That is this comment I was doing at the beginning. India cannot be understood as a country, but someone was saying that is not either a country or other things. It's a continent because if we understand this as a continent, we can easily grasp the idea. That there are international companies working in our country, and all of them have strategies that are not nationwide, but they rather have strategies by state or by each one of the cities. Now we will be speaking about figures, and I think that in this 21st century, more than ever, the private sector, the businesses are playing a role or are taking the initiative to manage these relationships with Latin America and the Caribbean more than the academicians or the academic sector. It's rather the private sector and the businesses that are driving this relationship. Between 2003 and 2008, I think that this was the first time that India got closer to the region and also to with many leaders of the region visiting India. We have the undersigning of the partial scope agreement with India and the Latin American countries. We started this adventure or journey with the BRICS, although India already had an embassy in Venezuela since the 1960s. India started to import an important amount of oil in 2006 and 2007 from Venezuela. The international trade between Latin America and India changed from $2 billion and went up to $17 billion in 2008 compared to 2003. So this thrust is something that we're going to see at a different level now. Maybe not too much in the trade-related area because it has expanded a lot, but I hope that this will be taking place in the diplomatic and political point of view. There are 25 or the 200 companies, sorry, and we have um, 27,000 employees in 17 cities from different countries, 9 different countries. Then we'll have another um, company of spare parts for automobiles that have 28,000 employees. They have 48 offices, and 41 of them are manufacturing facilities, as well as a technological center. The company is called Matterson. And only these two corporates have created, because most of the medicine was through acquisitions, and they are now handling 90,000 employees. At the regional level, this is a study that is convenient to conduct. I did this study 6 or 7 years ago, but I think that presently this figure has gone up. The number of employees that they hire in the region, I calculate around 100,000 people. The executive secretary today was speaking about something that I took note of. In the second lost decade of Latin America, it is difficult to create quality employment. And this is something that the companies in India are doing right now. At the end, you see the names of the different cities. The companies of India are investing throughout the region in Araraquara, in Brazil, in Barranquilla, in León, in the whole region. And that's why India is generating too many job opportunities. And most of these employment, maybe 90% of these job opportunities are located in value-added areas, including services, manufacturing, and not too much in extraction or extractive operations. To conclude now this part, we have the examples of the corporates. This comparison is fascinating to me. And some years ago, China acquired Luz del Sur, the electricity company in Peru, and the cost of the acquisition was $3.5 billion.
Alrededor del mismo tiempo, la empresa
At the same time, TCS company invested $1 million to establish an office in Lima, in Peru. That office is a new investment. They offered 1,000 employment with an investment on $1 billion, at least to start with. And the acquisition of Lucia Sur created 52 employments. And there was a change in capitals between one company from the United States to a company from China. So we shouldn't see only the numbers, but also the context. And before finishing the numbers, I don't want to talk a lot about international trade between India and Latin America, because in the second session, I guess we are going to cover this in depth. But I wanted to show you the international trade between India and Latin America to show two things. First, you can see the international trade reached to $50 billion of $49 billion 2014, and then $50 billion in 2022. But within that period and the other years, there was an increase, drop, increase, drop. And why is this so? Because I think that India, Latin America, have not institutionalized the international trade yet. There are different ways of doing this. Two are the most important ones. One is through trade agreements. India has agreements with Chile and Mercosur, but very restricted agreements. And the other thing is to integrate the value chain. And this is going on more than trade agreements. And the second thing is that many times people, part of the politicians, they ignore uh, that it's not the number of $50 billion is low. It's low compared to China and the United States, but at the global level, it's not a low value. I have provided you the two examples in 2014 and 2022 when we have a bilateral agreement between India and Chile, $50 billion. India was the third country with in terms of export over the region after United States and China. So it's far from China and the United States, but not far from other countries. I think that apart from the trade relationship, these commercial ties are made of 4 pillars. The first one is India's export to Latin America, especially in terms of value-added products. But that doesn't tell us so much about export from India to Latin America, but from India in general. India is not exporting raw material, I mean, in what extent, but because we don't have raw material, and if we have a raw material, we use it internally. So most exports are based on what you can see on the slide. The same with Latin America. Most exports, according to ECLAC studies as well, Argentina, Colombia, Peru, Chile, more than 90% of total exports to those countries are raw material. So how we're going to see a great difference in terms of exports of India? I think that the most important pillar is the pillar of Indian investments in the region, in sectors which provide a lot of employment with manufacturing services. And today, is 100,000 people employed, and in the formal sectors, in the formal economy sector, employments which are stable and which are growing significantly. The data consulting company, which today have 27,000 employees over the region, 10, 15 years ago, Henry can correct me if I'm wrong, but I guess it was the half. And so the growth is noticeable. And the other pillar is investment of Latin American companies in India, which are growing constantly, and the companies such as Cinepolis, a Mexican company, which is present all over the region. The second largest market in the world for Cinepolis is India. And Cinepolis has started in very small cities in India and reached the big cities after 10 years of presence in India. And now I'm going to talk about the political aspect. And this, I mean, is directed to Latin American audience, because sometimes it's difficult to understand why India is not paying so much attention to this region. The foreign policy of India from the independence in 1947 has always been focused on these 3 circles here. The first one is I mean, the neighboring countries, we have had many wars. We still have some wars with Pakistan and even with China. Bangladesh is a very important country, which is another neighboring country. The second circle is Asia, what we call the extended neighborhood, and strategic partners. Why I'm showing this? Because Latin America has been part of the last circle mainly, but I mean, over the last 2 years, they have been changing. Brazil, Mexico, and Argentina, as they are part of the G20, they are officially part of the second circle because they are strategic partners in words. But also in terms of implementation, this has changed. And I think that the ties of India with the rest of the region They are today they're being strengthening and they're changing. So in Delhi, we have a different perspective about this already. And in this session, I think that we're going to focus on the transformations of the global economy. And it's clear that that will affect all countries, including India and Latin America. There is a word that is widely used today, which is a polycrisis. These are many crises at the same time. And I think that India and Latin America, they should work on how to take advantage of a polycrisis, because you know that in front of any crisis, there is an opportunity. And I'm going to provide you some examples to explain how we could do this and the role that India and the region played in this polycrisis. There is a reordering of the global value chain. It's something that we all know. And in this case, India and Latin America, they are sometimes competitors, sometimes they are complementary. I'm going to give you an example of Intel, a semiconductors companies. They, for many years, invested in Costa Rica. 2022, they inaugurated a new plant of semiconductors, but this year they closed that plant. And I wrote a background note for ECLAC. The day after I gave this report, we had a news saying that Intel has signed agreement with Tata to start with a plant in India. And India announced after the closure of Costa Rica that they will be more focused in the Southeast Asia, in Malaysia. So there are cases where India is competing, and in other cases is complementary. In some cases, India, Latin America have worked together to take advantage of global changes. And I'm providing you with examples of three sectors. One is vegetal oil. For many years, India bought um, oil from Ukraine and sunflower oil. And after the war in Ukraine and the invasion of Russia, that changed from one year to another, and India increased the procurement of vegetal oil, not necessarily sunflower and soya oil, also from Argentina and Brazil. The Ukraine imports dropped I mean, in about 70%, and the same imports of soya and sunflower oil imports increasing 100% from Brazil, Argentina. And we have seen the same in other areas in oil. In 2010, United States implemented, or more than implemented, but put more pressure in India in terms of procurement of oil from Iran. And from one year to another, two companies importing from Iran, they changed imports almost completely from Iran to Venezuela. And when the United States put the sanctions to Venezuela in 2019, India changed imports of oil. The same two companies they started importing from Brazil, United States, Argentina, and Mexico. And so these value chains are more integrated. And today, when the United States is increasing the tariffs for imports of different products in India up to 50%, the Indian companies of the pharmaceutical sector, textile, they're going, instead of going to the United States, they're going now to Latin America. I think that we should see these changes and investment, we are seeing more investment of India to integrate to the value chain of copper, agricultural sector, and India to Latin America and vice versa. To offset the European markets, even the Chinese markets, it's not so good to depend on one country or another, but India is a point of diversification. And I wanted to mention here the geopolitical competence and an idea that came up that what I mean, the Latin American, which knows India the most, which is Jorge Heineken, is the idea of non-active alignment. I think that one of the best examples is that one. I think that 14 years, during 14 years, the international commercial partner to Brazil is China's, but the largest investor in Brazil is United States. And when India and Brazil, they have tariffs of about 50%, India has not reduced them, but Brazil, yes. And most products from Brazil, which had this tariff of 50%, they are not having that tariff anymore. And a clear example is the Chancay port, which was built by China. And this is an example of the Chinese presence in the region. But Chancay port has been advantageous for India because even Chile is sending today blueberries through that port to China. So we have opportunities, and I think that digital transformation, technological transformation, there is a lot of things to be done.
As you can read here, we see some examples that are not developed quite in depth. There are, however, some agreements that have been undersigned, but this is not something that is changing or is having a very significant impact for the countries in the region. I do believe that the corporates in India have the potential to do so. I wanted to show you this now. As a matter of fact, I'm running short of time and I will conclude my presentation shortly. And I would like to show you this just to point out that India has undergone a very significant change in the policy for the trade agreements. So when the partial scope agreements were signed with Chile, for example, in 2004, 2005, and 2006. India didn't want to have a free trade agreement, but India rather wanted to have more restricted agreements. But today, this policy is changing a lot. India has undersigned a more comprehensive and wide agreements with Australia, with England, with the Arab Emirates, and I do think that maybe next year we will be seeing these agreements that are wider with Chile and in the framework of Mercosur and the free trade agreement with Peru as well. Frequently, people compare India to China, and I think it's not the right time now to compare both of them. They are playing in two different leagues, and this is not a comparable situation because of figures and also as a result of the international trade or the loans or the different factors. But I wanted to share with you a particular point, fact that I received through balloting a week ago. And these are the figures from the United Nations. In here we can see today that China and India have almost the exact same number of working population. If we see back or in 2050, that is to say in 25 more years, India will have 1.3 billion people and China 700 million and 45,000. And I think that this major difference is showing what we'll be experiencing in the next coming years, or in terms of investment and economic activity in general terms. As a conclusion now, I wanted to show you some points that are the main roles played by India and Latin America. And in many conferences, I have listened about the challenges, and the first challenge is distance. And I don't think that distance is a real challenge. India is doing more trade and has more ties with California that is farther away compared to other countries in the region. And the same happens with China. China is doing business with the region, and distance is not a roadblock. And I am an example. I am from India. I was born in India, and I live in this region. There are many people who share this characteristic. People in India speak many languages, and I think that a real challenge is rather the perception. There is a lack of knowledge from both sides. I believe that the major difference is that India is a trade partner that is very important. Even the politicians who are coming from India to the region highlight this aspect that India is a trade partner. People in Delhi do not care about the political trend if they are leftist or rightist. And it the same happens in this region as far as the sharing with India is concerned. Secondly, India has a very different presence as compared to China and the United States in the region. Is free from the criticisms that the two other countries receive. And finally, something that the two speakers from ICLAC pointed out, India is a democracy, as many countries in this region, and India is facing many common challenges. From there, I think that we can learn a lot of ourselves. Well, I will conclude my presentation here. Thank you, ICLAC once again. Thank you very much for this presentation. We will give the floor to Mrs. Loreto Layton for her comments. Thank you. I will try to speak quickly to respect the time frames. First of all, I would like to thank you for this invitation. I would like to greet the people present here, and I would like to congratulate Harry because he's touching upon many aspects that we know for many years now. Over 4 years, we're starting to speak about India. We made many seminars and publications, and we have joined many of the promotions activities that are done by the Pro Chile Institution and other facilities. I had the pleasure to participate in Chile Summit India 2024, and all of this has been instrumental in order to visualize India from another perspective and to get closer to them, trying to understand India and to share this information with our audience. First of all, I would like to comment something about Harry's presentation and something else I would like to add, by the way. The analysis we have conducted about India is based on the fact that from Chile, we're speaking a lot that India is an equivalent of China 30 years ago. And therefore, we try to differentiate because not China, but however, we do have the opportunities we had with China 30 years ago. Now with India. Well, I would like to comment on the presentation of by Harry, the value that you accord to the private um, public sector cooperation. More concretely, you highlighted the historical aspect that the private sector played and the steps they are taking in regards of the authorities' decisions. This has been reflected in the fact that it has not been institutionalized yet. As a relationship. There are many free trade agreements under negotiation with Chile and the Mercosur that you mentioned. However, there is an active trade exchange that is important, and this is the way that we are paving the way to businesses and exploring in very remote areas from India, as it is the case of the Latin. It may be useful.
From its private sector, ¿no? Va detrás del sector privado. Esos son los pavos, por si acaso.
By the way, these are the peacocks that are expressing themselves in the backyard. Well, so I wanted to take notes of the quotations that he took from the Financial Times, and with the exception of the exporting companies directly controlled or regulated by the governments, the interaction between the businesses and the markets and not the urges from the ministers are those that provide these stable flows of trade. And this is the experience that we have experienced here in Chile and Latin America. And because of the strength that it has as trade relationships. And in the case of the negotiations between Chile and India, this is present today. And also we see the collaboration between the public and private sector. I would like to mention that the president of the um, Asian Chilean Pacific Foundation is also the president of an important fruit exporting company and the president of the bilateral council between Chile and India at SOFOFA. And in here we have a clear-cut example of these ties between the public and private sector for further negotiation. Another aspect I would like to comment about your presentation is that the same structure of the Indian state, this is expressed in a paper that you provided before. And you say that in the structure of the Indian state, you are giving more attention for the allocation of resources to Latin America. And this is like, very significant. There are some considerations that go beyond the trade related and commercial affairs. You said that there is the importance of the BRICS and also the collaboration of the Global South scheme. However, regardless of this, the intensification of the political contacts at the highest level, including the presidential and ministerial visits that you alluded to, the Indian officers that come specifically to Latin America, is a reflection of this change vis-a-vis our continent. It is worthwhile to mention also the presence of the Chilean state in India is reinforced by improving this closeness with both states. We have a diplomatic representation in New Delhi, and also we have a trade office in this place and Bombay, and therefore we are giving a very significant importance to this presence in India and to start understanding this country, which is very relevant to start out businesses. You also mentioned that the Indian companies are providing a very important number of employment to the region, but unlike the other investment, this creates a value, value added employment for the region that is very important. You also mentioned some companies that have 70 or 27,000 people employed in the region. I would like to mention also that this is a kind of investment that has high capability to help two aspects of our commercial reality in Latin America, which are very necessary. First of all, you are adding value to many of our experts, maybe, or including some traditional one, and also fostering the services. And this is something that has been proposed by many countries in the region for the export of services, including the digital assets, the capabilities of India in the area of artificial intelligence are some of the examples of the conditions I see in this realm. And Chile today is devoted to export more services, and India could be a bridge in order to go out and reach this goal. We are convinced that the high technological component of the Indian assets are very convenient from the price point of view, and they can be instrumental to transform these investments to foster the export of these assets from Latin America and the Caribbean. Chile exceeded all the records of services with over $3 billion, and these are fresh pieces of information from last week. And we know that in the private sector and the business community in general terms, there is a lot of work to do, and India can be a major opportunity in this connection. You also highlighted that all the Indian investment in Latin America is from private origin, although I don't want to say that this is a problem per se. It is obvious that in the turmoil today for the business community we live today through the geoeconomic and political measures, this investment can go through troubled waters very well. And we think that this is an asset of the investment of, in particular in Latin America, and I think it's worthwhile to raise this issue in a reflection venue like this one. Now, speaking about the investment underway, if they are materialized with Peru, Chile, and the Mercosur, although with the Mercosur they are just starting.
What is it?
I think that they can offer a quantic leap for the relationship with Asia Pacific. The institutionalization of this relationship is extremely relevant to focus on the region. I would like to mention the case of Chile. We are talking about an integral agreement of economic cooperation that goes beyond FTA and the traditional matters. So this is extremely important. The ambassador also said that in the short term, this could be a reality. Talking about the benefits of this trade agreement to promote exports, I think that we have a great challenge to diversify. We need to look for new partners in regions which are distant from a traditional one, what is very strategic today as well. And this in the case of Chile, but for most nations which have to go for that, Ambassador Heine and Harry mentioned here, which have called the non-active alignment, that many countries such as Chile and others who have been compelled to play in this environment where we have China, the United States putting pressures on our decisions and how we go out to a healthy relationship without interruption. And you have mentioned also in your conclusion that India is out of this action. And hence, I think that India is a focal point for the countries of our region over Asia for the potential to diversify our exporting basket. About Latin American investments in India, you also mentioned this. They are 2.5 billion, so we require to change the situations and to have more investments. In case of Chile, we have a multinational with a back office which is not of, desired size, and we need to change that. And now the opening of India, having different negotiations in parallel with a very marked protectionism in sometimes. Harry, you made a historical review, and this is a world of opportunities in Chile and in the region. And that assumes to include more complex dimensions that the ones were included in all the agreements when the geopolitical situation has changed dramatically towards a poly-crisis that we have today. India was emerging in international context, and all the ones who are interested in being India's partners are compelled to know India and to include it. And to know India is to know different states in one single country and to be present there and to understand the specificities, not only the language, but how the market works. This is an enormous challenge, and we are open to explore, invest, and position ourselves over there. Thank you so much.
Agradecemos a la señora.
We thank Loreto and now Ignacio Bartesagui. You've got the floor. Okay, thank you, Raquel. I would like first to thank ICLAC for this invitation and to congratulate ICLAC to discuss about India now, because as Secretary said that this it's important that ICLAC put the discussion on the table. And Hari, congratulations for the work that you have shared with us. I fully agree with you. Last week I was in India discussing the same topics, and I was in different research centers with a number of ambassadors of Latin America. I was in different universities as well. So, as Loreto said, but Hari also covered in the document, this is a new international context, and India has a role to play there. I think that this crisis and the commercial warfare and the geopolitical warfare, I mean, for Latin America is something essential. As Loreto said, that for many countries of the region, this pressure of the making the decision between United States and China is a problem, but it's opening an opportunity to India, which can offer itself to advancing a positive agenda. In Uruguay, this topic is not being discussed yet. And because if we go for one option, we have problems with the other, and so on and so forth. This commercial warfare, which has been imposed and is losing strength over these months, opens also an opportunity for India looking for new markets. Latin America is a relevant market, and I fully share that with you 100%. And Hari said that about the changes in India. India is changing. I have been there many times. I was impressed because I haven't been in India for about 4 or 5 years. And so there's still problems that are there, such as pollution. But in terms of automotive park, it's impressive. It's a financial integration and technology that we all know the role that India will play as a global power in next during the future years in this field is impressive. And there's been a change also. India, we know that is below the role that they need to comply with, but there is an opening. And we see with these new agreements that Hari mentioned, that creates a lot of expectations. What happened with United Kingdom, with the European Union, with the United Arab Emirates, and with the East, and in Latin America, the great leap is with Peru. I have this dream about Mercosur agreement. We put a lot of emphasis on that. And many times we shouldn't mention this. Well, there is a political will. Then Brazil, they have a special relationship with India, but they are more than 300 products. In the case of Uruguay, only one line of business is having preference. So in the case of India, in the case of Mercosur, what can we do without a trade agreement? Is something very complicated. So we're looking this with a lot of interest, because trade shows difficulties. As Harry said, we have reached peak And we are going back to that peak again in terms of concentration is incredible. In Uruguay is exporting to India, well, India with more than we're exporting only $150 million to India. So how is that possible? We are doing something wrong, definitely. And the answer is very simple. And because India is a closed economy, there are no opportunities. But this is not so. We need to work on that. We need to work on that lack of knowledge. Only one product is 80% what we export to India. I mean, 80% of wood. And this is repeated with other countries with high levels of concentration in the commerce. We have great challenges, which is not only related with commercial agreements, but also with commercial promotion. We need to understand this, what Hari showed, the difficulties to enter into that market, to understand India, to know the cities, the most important cities. I was in Hyderabad now, and you know that they are going through a technological outburst, and with the consulate of the United States in Hyderabad is the largest consulate that exists in the country in the world, because that means that the United States is looking something interested in Hyderabad. But our position at the embassy level, our teams, I was with ambassadors of Latin America the other days. We had lunch and they all have problems. But I'm going to talk about Uruguay mainly. We have someone that cooperates with ambassador, but it's only one individual, one embassy, one place, leading with 1.4 million inhabitants in India. So it's incredible. But India, we talk a lot in our F, and India has a great room to grow at LAC. But we need to institutionalize this relationship with LAC. I think that there is a lot of room to work in the IDB of Latin America. There is a lot of opportunity to work for integration processes in the region. So we have a strategy that we're exploring now. Is this changing? Yes. As Harry mentioned, in the case of Uruguay, we celebrate this change because we asked India to open an embassy in Uruguay 15 years ago, and there are indications that this will be open next year in March or April. And the vice chancellor will go in February to India, as well as the president, the first president of Uruguay, who will visit India. So something is changing, because when we observe this, we can say that India is open to change, and there's a lot of interest in this regard. I think that we something that I also recommend, and Harry also talked about this, the private sector, beyond that there are few companies which are present here, and vice versa, but I think that there are many sectors with potential which have not been explored yet. And because we're trapped with this concept of free trade agreement. And so the expectation is to have more or less what Chile has today. I don't think that with Mercosur we're going to have a trade agreement with India, but let's not stop in that discussion. We need to open towards more business partnerships in the energy, audiovisual, tourism, critical minerals. I mean, all these products which are of interest for India. So I think that we have a lot to do in this regard, and we're not doing that because sometimes we, I mean, are trapped with the idea this is a market with very high tariffs, and I think that we have to turn the page and to advance with free trade beyond the free trade agreement concept. And we need to know the cities and all these 20 years of advantages of China. We have a lot of people coming to Uruguay. I mean, the Chinese are coming to Uruguay permanently. They don't want to. They don't go to India. And I think that this is essential to understand each other. Another thing is that we shouldn't wait for India to define a strategy towards Latin America. They're going to make different things, but a strategy. I mean, it's Latin America that should suggest a strategy because India is very complex. So I think if Latin America should react probably and should take steps towards how this region is better known and to show the opportunities that we may offer. India will play the role that China is playing now. And they are not perceived as the main competitor Latin America as Europe, India, and the United States. The main competitor of that China perceives in Latin America is India. And India is now, I mean, they're offering a level of products competing with China. Together with a political agenda, with more investment, investment in strategic infrastructure, digital economy, etc. I think that there is a great potential there. And I think that I mean, Brazil has another role to play because of G20, BRICS, and other. But in Latin America, I think that we need to state a strategy. We shouldn't wait for the spillover. We need to look for our own strategies. The countries of Latin America, which have known that privilege of being in a relationship with India, they need to look for the different type of relationship, bilateral relationship, or other processes of integration like the ones that is carried out by Mercosur. And so I think that we need to look for our own strategies and to provide India with a solution because we probably can't settle the service agreements or sectorial agreements which are not being discussed today.
Please. Obviously, later on, you can see the capabilities that the Foreign Affairs Ministry can have and the directions that have to follow up all of these activities. And there you have the explanations. We wonder if we know India and there is no political willingness to put at a or a country that is an excellent opportunity without generating further restrictions. I will stop here. Thank you. Thank you. We would like to thank you for doing this quickly, and I will give the floor now to Mariana Aparicio. Thank you very much, Loreto. First of all, I would like to thank you for the invitation to be present here with you. For me, it's an honor to be at the Raúl Previch room. And I am moved when I think of Latin America and the international context and this new emerging partner that is having an increasing potential for the relationships with our countries. I would like to greet Mr. Jose Manuel Salazar, the Executive Secretary of ICLAC, the Ambassador of India in Chile, Mrs. Joshi, and all the members of the ICLAC and the diplomatic corps accredited. Harry, it was an honor and also very pleasant to listen to you because India and Latin America is at times an imaginary that is being built about what a country is. In Latin America, we also have a different vision about this country. From the reflection of your text and your presentation, I would like to highlight 4 points that are deep by themselves and that help us think about Latin America. The international context is highly changing, as you were pointing out. There is a discussion about the poly crisis and the global south. And I would like to say in plural, the south, because it's different in terms of interest. In Latin America, the Caribbean and India are not exceptions to this rule. The international economic integration of our region is going through times that are very complex and challenging. What used to be as a trade policy of the countries for the interest of international economic integration in the region and the world is changing with the configuration of political interests and foreign policies. And we are not just thinking about the geopolitical and geoeconomic changes, but also the a correlation of forces of other states that are affecting the trade policy and also the national security policy, including the drug trafficking and all that. So we need to think about this partner uh, that is permeated with other policies, with the national interest and these geopolitical strategies. But it's also facing a major challenge because in the multilateral system, we are in venue that is thinking about the dynamics of these policies for the region, where the multilateral system is also in crisis. We see this white elephant that we have in the room, and we need to speak about this multilateral system, not only from the organizations, but from the practice of international trade. Therefore, there is no previous debate between the multilateralism and regionalism. And then this is the trademark of these times with this convergence of policies, with the security policies, the trade policies, and the, uh, are very important. Something that you mentioned, Harry, in your presentation that is completely relevant because we started to speak about the democratic diplomacy. And this is fundamental because there is another important elephant that are tariffs. We are not speaking about free trade, but we're speaking of selective protective policies in developing countries, and therefore the relationship we establish between Latin America and India, but also for other economies should take into account the bilateral national strategies. In this regard, it is fundamental one of the um, topics you developed in your work, the participation of the entrepreneurial sector. The entrepreneurial sector and the trade chambers are very important for the creation of trade activities. And this is an example in Latin America in this regard for the process of regional integration is the Pacific Partnership, and because the interests of if foreign policies are not necessarily going at the same speed as you were mentioning in the publication. If we take into account that the bilateral policy is a sine qua non of the external foreign policies and the trade policies, and there are different global souths in plural, as my colleague said from Uruguay, and should speak about the north of Latin America, that is to say Mexico and Central America. And right now, the upper chamber of my country is voting these selective commercial policies where India will be affected by tariffs, custom tariffs. And this is not strange in Mexico because many countries in Latin America and the Caribbean are coming up with effective trade tariffs because the United States and its foreign policies are an instrumentalization of political interests. So, is the entrepreneurial sector and the trade chambers are the important thing, or the sectors where the economy can be launched? This is not related to the per se rationality, but also the economic diplomacy that is fundamental to establish the communicating vessels with Latin America and India. So identifying the economic interest is on one track and also related to the multilateral sector. We will have the election of the secretariat, secretariat of different organizations, and this is not negligible. So India can be major partner to raise these common points where the different global souths will have the possibility for further development as political stability for their countries. To observe the time frames, my dear Raquel, I would like to mention your conclusions and the three areas you mentioned because the challenge is the perception we have, and there is an important work to be developed not only from the Foreign Affairs Ministry but for the academia. I'm part of the most important publicly run university in Mexico, Universidad de la Nación, and I would say that we have students that are very rare in terms of ethnicity, but and the academy can be a major ally for the mutual knowledge. The presence also is very important for economic diplomacy, and India can build these ties that in the long term will be relevant potentialities. And I would like to conclude here because this will be the priority sector for India in the case of the Mexican economy as some Central American countries. This is part of the national policy and the security policy of the United States. That is the automotive sectors. We have a lot of work to do jointly. We should think of this relationship between India and Latin America together. And I would like to congratulate ICLAC for this work. Thank you.
Muchísimas gracias a la señora Aparicio que
Thank you, Mrs. Aparicio. And she allowed us to have 2 minutes for the Q&A session, and we'll offer the floor now for questions. If you can identify yourself with your name and the institution you work for. Yes, thank you. Ricardo Sanchez from the former ICLAC and the University of Los Andes in Colombia for Hari. You made an excellent presentation and you mentioned a critical topic that restricts the exchange between India and Latin America. You mentioned the transit time and that is very lengthy. And speaking about the public policy that is in this realm, in my opinion, and I would like to hear about yours too, India has lessons to offer that are very valuable. The Sagarmala program, India Vision, also the Development Fund, and Garet Sagat. And these policies entail some disruptive elements that are very timely for Latin America. Many countries are still thinking of the consensus of Washington and how to get out of the development trap. What do you think about all of this? Thank you. Thank you very much for your question. As a matter of fact, I do not know too much about the maritime topic, and I will be straightforward. I think that all of these policies, the maritime policies, are rather related to the Indian Pacific Ocean. And at the beginning, when we started with this policy, India didn't have in mind to include countries from Latin America, and this was added later on. But I think that this dialogue has not yet begun. In this area of Latin America and India relationships, India, for example, I have conferences of the maritime issues many times in a year, and I do not see people from the area or the region participating in this. But for transit, this is actually a challenge. Uh, Challenge because India is losing too much trade with China and many other countries just as a result of the cost of freight. And many products do not go into the international trade of India and the region as a result of this problem. And I don't see that this will change in the short term. There is no motions to change it in the short term. Thank you. Any further questions in the room? Mr. Alberto Arenas has a question. Yes, I have a question for Harry. Well, India, as the Executive Secretary was saying, is a fifth world economy, and in the last 10 years, the growth rate has been over 6% on average. And basically, India has also diminished the poverty rates very significantly. The latest World Bank report is saying that the extreme poverty is around 2%. So I would like to ask you about this model, the economic and social model of India. Where are you putting the stress, and which are the key points to reach these results? It's a very good question, a relevant question. As a matter of fact, this is very complex. And the experts in India, they don't have an answer for this, because we cannot have a policy to revert policies nationwide. Many governments have tried this, but they have not succeeded. The solution is providing more power to the state um, governments, to all the states of India, and also according power to the private sector. For example, we have the model of microfinancing that is doing very well. 6 months ago, I had to go myself to a development with a development bank from Latin America, and we saw there institutions of microfinancing in India. And there is a lot that Latin America can learn from them, because in the last 4 or 5 years in India, the financial inclusion has played a very significant role. In 2019, 40% of the population in India had a bank account, and today, over 90% of the population has a banking account. The major difference has been because of technology access, and also uh, for providing to the states and the private sector this drive in order to do what they will within the limits established by the government.
We still have a lot of poverty, and we need to do more. And although we haven't reached the levels of China, I think that India can also learn um, a lot. I have made two studies about what India can learn from the policies and conditional transference of this region and other countries. India started to build similar programs 10 years ago, but Mexico began in the 90s. So we have a lot to learn, but unfortunately, there's no information that can be shared about this in this sector. Thank you so much to the commentators and panelists. We are now closing this session. The message is that the ambition is precision. We cannot do with the entire India or Latin America, but there is still a lot of potential and challenges. And so we have a window of opportunities with that. We are all invited to a coffee now, and we're going to reconvene at we're going to have a 20 minutes break. We will be back at 11:37. Thank you.
Les invitamos amablemente a tomar.
Invite you to retake your seats to follow with the schedule today. We will start now the second session that is New Frontiers for Expanding India LAC Cooperation in Trade and Investment. This session will be moderated by Mr. Sebastian Herreros, Economic Affairs Officer at ICLAC. Mr. Herrero is a commercial engineer of the Catholic University in Chile, and he has a master degree in science and international economic politics in UK, and as of 2009, he works as economic affairs officer at ECLAC, and briefly he worked for 13 years in the national economic direction of the Foreign Affairs Ministry in Chile, including 5 years as an advisor in the mission of Chile before the Trade Commission in Geneva. You have the floor now, Mr. Herreros. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, and good morning, everyone. Well, we will start this session that flows very naturally, I would say, right from the first one, and maybe the hallmark of this one is that we are going to put the emphasis rather on the opportunities, the specific opportunities that are coming up for the region and for India in order to enhance their trade and investment flows, as it was very clear in the first panel. They have been historically very dynamic, but they are under their potential. So I would like to resume everything that we discussed in the first panel. From the economic point of view, India appears to be very attractive for our region, particularly in the context, economic and geopolitical world context that is so complex because of three reasons. First of all, of the demographic way, because it's the highest populated country in the world, and their economic growth, and that is very rapid in the recent decades among the large economies. And thirdly, because India is producing also um, producing capability, as China is becoming the factory of the world, and India is taking a different pathway, that is a specialization in services. And this is the segment that is most dynamic in terms of the world trade, and there have been also complementarities with countries in our region. So with no further ado, I would like to formally start out this session. We have two presentations of Harsha Singh and Cecilia Plotier. I will introduce them shortly, and I will ask them to use 15 minutes for their presentation. And then we have two commentators, Miguel Angel Garcia from the Foreign Trade Development of Ministry of Foreign Trade and Tourism of Peru, and Henry Manzano from the Tata Consultancy Services in Latin America. Harsha is Senior Fellow from the International Center, member of the Center of the World Trade, and Mr. Senior Fellow of the Non-Atlantic Council in the United States. He has a very long experience related to trade and competence or competition policies. He was Deputy Director General at the World Trade Organization for 8 years, Secretary of the Regulating Authority of Telecommunications in India, President of the Center at the University of Delhi and Brookings, India. And he has been professor also at the universities in his own country, Brazil and China. Harsha is going to present on the opportunities to promote trade between our two regions. Harsha,
Are you ready?
Yes, ECLAC, and also the other speakers who have set the stage. I think it's a very important time for Latin America and Caribbean on one side and India on the other. I have a presentation. Could that presentation be put up, please?
Over here. We see it. Right. Go ahead.
Next slide. So basically, in this presentation, I points. One, that both regions, Latin America and Caribbean and India, are keen on developing their relationship. In the previous session, we saw that the relationship was improving, efforts are being made. I want to emphasize in this session that those level of efforts have been taken to a much higher level, and therefore the potential and the likelihood is quite strong. But we are starting from a position where the current relationship is way below potential. Share of India's imports from Latin America and the Caribbean, I'll call it LAC in the rest of the presentation. In its global merchandise imports is only slightly less than 4%. There are by several important people. We need to give, however, focused attention both to creating trade opportunities and collaboration to raise the relationship to a higher level. And in this context, what I will suggest is certain product areas. Next, please. Next. So we've been talking about large potential of India. I just want to give a few examples. India's population is more than double that of the LAC region. It's been mentioned India is the fifth largest economy, on its way to be the third largest. By 2040, according to certain forecasts, India's GDP is likely to exceed the GDP of LAC as a whole. India's global rank as importer of goods and services last year was number 7. By 2030, according to a forecast, it's likely to be 4th. And another forecast shows that compared to last year, India's imports of goods and services. So I'm trying to show the and the opportunities for LAC exporters to link up with that market. Here, I'm going to focus more on LAC exports to India. The same methodology could be adopted to assess the exports the other direction also in a partnership fashion. So India's imports, if we take them as one unit, will increase by 70% by the next 5 years. So, and further, they will be 2.5 times the imports of last year by 2035, according to the forecast. Next, please. The next slide shows you the growing market of India in comparison to the imports of Germany. 2030 onwards are forecasts. These forecasts are made by the UK Department of Trade in its 2 studies. So So in 2024, imports of India were about half the imports of goods and services of Germany. It'll be about 3/4 by 2035, and by middle of this century, it will far exceed. Next, please. market which India provides in a growing way. Next, please. So the Indian Trade and Industry Minister, in his speech and his discussions, has said that India's aim is to double trade volumes in the next 5 years with LAC. He identified some potential areas of focus. So people think of India more in terms of services. That is a services driven economy. That is not necessarily the case. India's goods trade is also increasing a lot. In fact, India's goods imports are larger than its goods exports. So from the LAC point of view, that is something to keep in mind. And here he's also identified, the minister has identified digital services. I want you to keep this in mind because it'll arise again at the end of the discussion. He's talked about agriculture and food security investments together in climate resilient agriculture, storage, cold chain logistics, value added processing, etc. So the whole supply chain, starting with new technologies and investments which are collaborative. He's also talked about collaboration and cooperation in other areas like renewable energy, lithium processing, battery manufacturing, biofuels, and potential for ethanol powered vehicles. Next. He talks about collaboration, cooperation. So please note the kind of relationship he's it involves growing. There is a the economic partnership. So here, I just he wants not just governments to interact, but business and take advantage of the opportunities which exist. Next. The Confederation of Indian Industry and the LAC digital trade platforms are identified. I want this is the Development Bank of Latin America and the Caribbean makes efforts to connect public-private entities to identify opportunities, to fund certain initiatives, etc. And there are ideas and potential tools that emerge from G20 presidencies. From the Indian presidency, certain ideas emerge, and from the Brazilian one. Also, the ITC, which focuses on small and medium enterprises. And another the startup ecosystem. I think this is an area where we need to see some partnership also. So specific efforts are required. We will, in terms of products there. Next, please. So we I'm going to discuss identifying products at HS category level. So there are three criteria on the projects, which are I have taken some kind of so three categories kind of background paper, which I'll be talking about just after this. So our major LAC exports to the world. The bold numbers are those categories which overlapping here. Major HS India's imports from the world. So if you take a look here, look the imports of India's there. It'll become clearer in the next slide. From either LSE nor is it a major export of LSE. For further opportunities. Next, please. Next. Which is a matrix, which shows in and you in 20 the cut to the product level also. Major exports of LSE to the world, but these are not imported by India from LSE. Here is you can opportunity. So if I've separately got data on that, and there are number of items which it is from the world, but imports from LAC, and it can yeah. So once previous slide, the previous one. Which are in yellow, which are not part of India's imports from LSC, and those which are actually not part of India's imports from the world, those categories are the ones which require special export promotion strategies. These are India's imports from LSC, but if they are also in LSC, then second largest is the largest category. 31.4% of the total imports of India, while from LAC from the world is only 3.2%. So there is a large gap which could be worked on. So these overlap. Where is a potential for further exports? Where are the items which are part of India's large imports? LAC. So how? What? Now, as the forecast in the UK trade department trade study on what are the sectors which will see large change in terms. So you have other business services. Services, I told you to keep this in mind. You see advanced manufacturing. 0.2 plus whatever is the growth of global GDP. So 3. It's worthwhile to see that agriculture is a declining sector. So prepare for this change in LAC. This is the growth for shows less than 50%. Between 75 and 100%, and the green color shows more than 100%. You can see that the growth is 100% for all these categories. Please go back to my point of the kind of opportunities which linkages with India is going to provide in terms of imports. And if you see Latin, where the rise is relatively lower. One is digital services, where it's quite low, and it's but for India, it's 134%. This partnerships. So wherever, say, digital candidates for the future, one should start. And
Yes, please. Thanks to you, Harsha. I know it's late over there in Delhi. Please stay with us so that perhaps you can take some questions from the audience at the end of the panel. Thank you. Y bueno, sin más entonces ahora le
Without further ado, we will continue to the next presentation by Cecilia Gautier. Cecilia, she's the head of the Foreign Investment Unit and Human Talents Unit of ECLAC. She has been working here since 2015. Prior to that, she had experience in different positions in the public sector in Uruguay, her country of origin, especially in the sector of industry, energy, and mining. Cecilia, she's got a master's degree in economy by the latest Georgetown, and her presentation will mainly focus on opportunities for direct foreign investment and balance of foreign investment flows between India and Latin America. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you. As Sebastian said, the content of my presentation is first a general focus on the position of India, Latin America, and the Caribbean in terms of foreign direct investment. And then I'm going to concentrate in the regional trends in Latin America and the Caribbean, and then some rooms for integration. And so in terms of trade, relating these to India and the region. So with this view of FDI, I would like first to share what is going on in the world in terms of foreign direct investment and globalization, a great growth in the world in the transbordering capital with 10% annual during the decade of 2000, and then after 2007 this increases to 3% in average. So this is if you think in integrating more, attracting more foreign direct investment, you need to be aware about the situation, the current situation. So if you want to know more about this, you can send an email. But in general, one element that is interesting to mention here is that if you see what is in purple has to do the foreign direct investment in developed economies, and the green ones is in developing foreign investment, direct investment industries, where we have different development in different sectors in the world. And for Latin America, the Caribbean, and India, this is of utmost interest. This information here in another format, developed economies and developing economies. You can see on the left, initially during the 90 to 2010, the flows were in developed economies, while after 2021, 2020, I would say, the developing economies, the global south, this is more relevant for investment. If you see that the main global investors are the companies of the central economies and not much in terms of the amount, but the developing economies which have still a participation which is equivalent to 70-30, equivalent to the 90s and 2000 decades. So we are in a world now where direct investment is stagnated, and we have the economies of the South, global. We have Latin America and the Caribbean as a whole, and India as a country, as Harry said at the beginning, a country that shouldn't be considered as a country because it's too heterogeneous. And so we have heterogeneity also in Latin America and the Caribbean. But what we can see in the green line, the direct investment in each region country, and also outgoing investment. What we see in both countries, we are receiving here more investment that compared to the multinational companies. So we have regions and countries where still have room to grow here, and this has been sustained over time, although we can see that the investment going out are growing here. There is some dynamism in this region and operating outside. As a general context, this is data of balance of payments, which has a lot of limitations in terms of what they reflect and what they represent in terms of multinational activities. But this is normally what is used in literature. So this is a not perfect approximation, but we can have a view about how we are positioned in the global investment context. In Latin America and the Caribbean, over the last 15 years represented 12% of global for trade for direct investment, and now some elements about what is going on with FDI in Latin America and the Caribbean. In the year 1995, we have this report published by the ECLAC. There's foreign direct investment in Latin America and the Caribbean. This report tried the circumstances and then the different studies about investments in the region from China, Korea, Europe, but we have never done about India, so we have room for that. Probably 2027, we can concentrate in the India investment in the region. What is going on in Latin America and the Caribbean? We have had a great growth in terms of investment when there was a commodities boom in the region. So foreign direct investment had the maximum historical peaks in this region. In 2024, we had an annual growth compared to 2023, but capital flows are still below what we had at the beginning of 2010 in the formation of internal of the GDP and its capital when we talk about Latin America and the Caribbean, and we think of this as a company. All the countries are very different. We have Mexico and Brazil, which are one of the main investors in the world, which have huge markets compared to India. It's not, they're not so significant, but they're important for the region. 2024, they represented 61% of the total foreign direct investment in terms of the balance of payment. And then we have economies which are positioned in the mid-range, where they are in the fourth, fifth place, which like Chile, Peru, Colombia. And then this is a region where we have some specialization in terms of the type of investment per sector.
Mariana already said the investment in Mexico and Central America and the link with the United States, that is a key factor. Also, the sectors and the type of investments they attract, and also in South America, where we have investment is more related to market access. And in the whole country, there are investments taking place in all areas. This is just general panorama of what are the relative specializations. Now, related to the evolution of investments, there are some countries that are attracting much more of the investments, having FDA in their countries and creating new sectors in Costa Rica and Dominican Republic, where the has not stopped for 10 years. In Chile, also, this performance has been very important, and there are some other countries where there are behaviors that are more unequal. In general terms, this is a region that is very open to the FDI, with a weight of 12% of the global income, compared to trade that is just 3% and 6% of good service. And here is 12%, and this is a region open to investment, and therefore the Indian companies operating in the region already underwent this experience. And here we see the balance of payments, and one of the things we observe from ECLAC, and that also gives importance to the diversification and knowing from where we receive the investors. And here we have the balance of payments and the three components. So here we have the equity flows that are the new capital that comes into the economy, and then the activity of the companies that are already established. Then here we have the launch between the companies and the reinvestment of the profits. And this makes sense because there is a large stock of investment, and the companies decide whether they continue to invest in the region. There is a certain stagnation for the inputs of fresh capital, and therefore our interest in Latin America is to present the importance that has expanding the number of investors and not just retaining the traditional ones. We'll see who they were. And here we see in terms of investors, these are the investments by origin, by source. As I said a while ago, the statistics of the balance of payments are very imperfect. Is observe this issue because of the methodology issues, but in here we have 14 countries that have this information when they launch the report. And the main investors in the region are still the United States and the European Union, and then we have the inter-regional investment with Latin America having increasing weight. And then we have the other investors that have a weight that is less important. In case of India, we can identify in the national statistics, but the weight is so low that this is not included by the statistics office, and they put in a category that shows others, and therefore this investment cannot be identified. Concerning these sectors, you see that India has a very high specialization in services, and in Latin America and the Caribbean, the services sector is the one that is receiving most of the FDI, followed by manufacturing and then the natural resources. And this is the insight of investments in the region in a summarized manner. And then we have the exit of these investments. We see the main investors that are Brazil, Mexico, Colombia, and Chile, where there is an expansion of investments, and that is not growing steadily, but we can see that it has a low level of investment right now. And the very important thing is that the announcements of new investment projects are mainly focused in Latin America and the Caribbean. We are showing here some announcement by Latin American and Caribbean companies by destination country. 70% are in the same region. And then we have North America, that is the following destination, and Europe, or most of the investment is quite concentrated in the region, as we were speaking in the case of India, that is based in concentric cycles of investment. And this is rather staying in the region, although there are some Latin American companies that are present in India. In the case of Cinepolis, for example, they have made a venture capital endeavor for the manufacturing of buses, and in Brazil also. And however, this is still a marginal market for the activity of all the Latin American corporates there. And here we have a preliminary approach. It doesn't mean that we have done a specific study yet for the next spaces for integration, but we devised this in order to show you some elements that are important to be raised. If we consider the statistical figures concerning FDI, we underrate the situation, and we see the situation of the last 15 years with the countries in the region. We see Mexico Panama and Trinidad and Tobago. However, we are aware that there are some other countries of the region operating in India, and this is just an indicator, but it does not allow to see what is going on with the investment in the region. In here, there are many possible implications as we see the exit of capital from India to LAC. We see many of these investments that go to the financial cycle, but there is no way in the balance of payment to see where it is targeted. It can be the United States even, but we don't know. And there are many special groups of investments that are from India but are based elsewhere. For example, they have a headquarter in Luxembourg. And when we want to see the investment of these companies in abroad, we have these difficulties in order to identify them from the statistical point of view and to know where they are actually operating. An indicator that can be helpful in this regard is to see the announcement of investment projects where we have all the compilation of the transboundary investment projects of the different countries. And here we analyze the announcement of investments of corporates from India around the world. On the left-hand side, we can see some $20 billion per year investment. There was an important increase in 2022 because of the green hydrogen in Egypt. And these are, in general terms, the announcements that these bases compiles, but these are not the only ones existing out there. If we see now the regions where the Indian companies are investing and the weight of LAC for the destination of the announcement of the investment is very low. If we think in the decade of 2010, we have the medium that was 32, and in 22 is 2%, and therefore there is a lot of space yet to increase this amount. There are some very powerful groups there, and we see that the weight is still very low. A very important element that was alluded to in the previous um, presentations was this sectoral specialization. In here, we see the annual average amounts for the last 5 years, and before it had in million of dollars in 5 different sectors. In 2010, we see the different announcements that were done for a hydrocarbon and the different metals and minerals. And this is general for the world, not only for LAC. In the last 5 years, we see that there are more investments in the sector of renewable energy with major importance of the projects going on in Egypt. We see that the LAC has also received a lot of investments for the renewable energy, but the European companies are leading this sector presently. Then we have metals and minerals, and then software and IT services going up to $2 billion. And now the electronic components that represent $1.6 billion. The communications is also very important as a sector where Latin America and the Caribbean receive a lot of investment and where there is a willingness to develop more productive capability in the region. Now, if we see the different announcements for Latin America and the Caribbean, in here we see this depicted in smaller figures, and the most important is the IT services represent over $130 million per year, but it's increasing quite significantly compared to 2010. Then we have the auto parts, metals, the automotive and transportation equipment, the plastic products, chemical products, and finally the financial services and automobiles that do not have more recent information. What do we see in terms of specialization vis-a-vis Latin America and the Caribbean? There is space for further diversification, and it's important to see how they are supporting processes that maybe are not important in the overall investment perspective. We see, for example, the amount is not very important because they are small ones. If we see in terms of employment, they are much more significant in the sector setup, and they do not appear in the top listing in the region, but this is the main sector where they are investing, and this is strategic from many points of view. And then we see the renewable energies, although it has not been done as an announcement in the region. We know that India is doing a lot in the world. Communication is also expanding a lot in the region. There is the creation of data centers in the region, and it has been led by United States and European companies, and there is therefore an opportunity for India to position inside this sector too. I will arrive to the final reflections and I will conclude shortly. So we need to have these emerging partners in the global economy in transformation that are geopolitical conflicts, that are distances that hinder this trade, but the surprises will continue to come up as they have done historically. The FDI will continue when the sector deserves it, and there are some opportunities to exploit, but the different regions allow the complementarity. And therefore, here we have three key points. India, as an investor in the region, is supporting the strategic sectors. I see IT, for example, I remember as in Uruguay, we received this initiative. Many of the economists said that they would have to know how to program and so on. And now they are employing a lot of people in Uruguay. This is one of the most dynamic companies, and therefore this is taking place in many countries of the region. One of the things that we like to highlight in ECLAC is the productive transformation and the importance of these chains, and there is an important role played by the investment to contribute to the productive development. But I concentrated here in the policies that the countries have, but with a positioning that is rather political, that is very powerful, where the economic policy is key in order to generate the spaces so that the bilateral businesses can later develop and have all the qualities that we understand they should have for Latin America and the Caribbean to provide this inclusive, sustainable development. So thank you very much. And this is the end of my presentation.
Muchas gracias, Cecilia.
Thank you, Cecilia. We will go immediately with Miguel Angel Garcia. As I said at the beginning, this is the Director of Assistance to Foreign Trade and Tourism of Peru, NICETUR. Hopefully, no more than 8 minutes to try to have the opportunity to ask some questions at the end of this session. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for this invitation to this important event, and greetings of our Vice Minister Cesar Jona. In relation to the two former presentations for Peru, India is a very important commercial partner, the second most important commercial partner after China, and the fourth most important in Asia. As Mr. Harsha, as Harsha commented, this commercial relationship is below the real potential that we would like to reach. At present, 90% of the exports, Peruvian exports to India, are basically minerals. Although we see growth in terms of some agro-industrial products such as blueberries, coffee, and cocoa, and the idea is to grow, to increase and diversify our exporting basket and to that country, because of course our intention is to grow in this current exports, especially mineral, which are strengthening to us. What are the type of complementarities to grow in agro-industrial areas? Specifically in Peru, we have seen in the textile sector and chemicals also sector where we could identify opportunities for growth. And how we can get this growth, a better commercial relationship, as it was said before, we need to institutionalize this commercial relationship and probably through a trade agreement. We have been negotiating since 2017 a trade agreement. There was a pause during the pandemic, but we're making progress. We had a round of negotiation in November, and we want to have a next round, the first quarter next year. And this is interesting, as it was said. Also, services is another sector where we have room to grow. This set of services that has been negotiated, and also about critical minerals. So different sectors are working on this complementation between both economies, but internal agenda is also important. Not everything is trade agreements, but what have to make so this is a long-lasting relationship, and that we also attract investments. And the key word is competitiveness. There are different factors where foreign direct investment in a country is key. And competitiveness is essential. Peru has very clear policies. We are going to publish, and we expect to pass a national foreign trade policy, including trade facilitation. We have heard about customs aspect. We are working on a project for digitization of electronic documents of foreign trade activities, and within as part of the UCITRAL standards. And so we're talking about initiatives so ICLAT can support us to adequate our standards to the digital trade. And value chain is important to work with SMIs. We have the exporting productive route, which is a very initiative for the SMEs, because we are aligning all the services offered by government agencies to develop the capabilities of SMEs for them to be able to export. This has been awarded some national recognition, and I think that we will know about that very soon. We can hear about this experience at a regional level. There's something very interesting. Services is something very important as well. In the case of Peru, it's important to develop human capital to strengthen it, and this is another aspect that we need to develop. I know that we don't have much time, so in terms of what Ignacio Barstein said, I think that international cooperation is something very important. International cooperation relates not only with a unidimensional approach, but I think that proximity between Latin America and the Caribbean and India need to cover different channels, and cooperation should be in the middle. China has having rapprochement with different sectors. So India and Latin America, we should look for different sectors through South-South cooperation, exchange of experts, and I think that we are on the in that direction in terms of cooperation with the free trade agreement that we're negotiating. We can see a willingness of India to cooperate. I think that this is the most extensive chapter in this negotiation, but we want to go deeper into different areas. So I think that India is a very important partner, and we want to strengthen that relationship with these free trade agreements, and we want to sign an internal policies focused on competitiveness, foreign trade, facilitation of trade, and international cooperation. Thank you. Thank you, Miguel Ángel, because I think that you had 1 minute left. But then the second commentator is a private sector voice. This is an emblematic company of the presence of foreign direct investment of India in the world, which is data consultancy services. Henry Manzano is president of the company for Latin America. Thank you. It's an honor to share our experience with you. I'm Chilean, and I had the opportunity to know the Tata Group in the year 2003. And this was part of Tata Group that was a technological area. It's important to mention that the government of India around the 70s, they already envisaged that one of the competitive advantages they had was to develop the technological area. They realized that there was a need to foster private-public partnership through important subsidies to the companies devoted to develop technological activities. And this policy has been maintained over time. And today we see how the 11.5% of India's GDP comes from the industry, where we see that the growth over the next years will double that number very easily. And in the current world, it's plenty of challenges, and as we have heard, artificial intelligence, robotics, and cybersecurity, data center, and all the necessary energy for this technology can work. All this poses a great challenge, but at the same time, they are a great opportunity. And we, as company located in Latin America, we have been talking about investment of Indian companies in Latin America, and I think that Tata, through TCS branch, is one of the greatest investment of an Indian company in Latin America. But investment is mainly focused on developing human talent. It's an investment difficult to quantify, but today we are 27,000 employees, and 95% of our people are Latin Americans. And that means that the human talent that we have developed through agreements with universities, with technical institutes and programs that we have developed as globally, such as Codevita, Codify, which are programs to train the new programmers, and they participate. All the countries of the world participated in two opportunities that have been won by Latin Americans. One was a Chilean, and the other ones was an Ecuadorian participant. So contribution and investment. To mention this in terms of the dollars coming in, I think that is important that we also focus on what India provides beyond the direct investment in dollars. So on the other hand, it's very important to highlight that part of that investment in the technological area should be translated into exports of services for Latin America to the rest of the world. Today in Uruguay, we are 2,500 people, and we're exporting $150 million to the United States in technology. In Mexico, we are 11,000 individuals exporting $600 million to the United States. So in the investment done by the group through the development of human capital has been enormous, and we feel very proud of this. And we think that the contribution that we can make in Latin America is very, very important. Now, as experience of being a Latin individual which had the opportunity to relate to this Indian company and how the rest of Latin American companies can, can take in benefits of this opportunity. We need to recognize that although Indians are very different in different places, it's a world within a country. As Cecilia said, in terms of Latin America, Brazil is very different from Mexico, and Mexico different from Peru. But with India, we culture the concept of the family and the values which are the most important. Closing ties in terms of personal relationships is something that has helped a lot in terms of developing this relationship with India, and that strength should be also taken by other Latin American entrepreneurs if they want to invest in India. The most important investment of Latin American company in India is represented by Mimbo, which is one of the major producers of bread in the world. They have done an incredible work in India, and there are many others. But the key is to look for kind of a partnership with the people of India, directly try to reach India to such a big and complex world in an isolated manner is very difficult. I know that there are a lot of illusion to export fruit or the food because of the potential market that exists there. But my suggestion would be to look for local partners, local allies to develop the different types of businesses that you're interested in.
Muchas gracias, Henry. Bueno,
Thank you very much, Henry. And we have about 7 minutes according to the agenda. So I would like to give the opportunity now to our audience to ask some questions. I have Loreto Leighton from Fundación Chilena del Pacífico. Well, this is... ¿Está en línea, señor Singh?
Relating the potential for financial services from LAC in India. Could you further elaborate on that? For instance, do you foresee opportunities for digital banking, neobanks, and fintechs in general? And likewise, how would you assess the regulatory frame for FDI in financial services in India?
muted, Harsha. Right. Did you get the question?
The question.
Good.
Should I answer?
Go ahead. Yes, please.
So, as far as the financial services or the fintech sector is concerned, for banks is quite rigorous, or if I may use that word. And getting into banking services here requires going through certain kind of regulatory requirements. But you will recall I mentioned the startups. In the context, quite a few fintech companies. So startups in India, most of them have tech at the end, ed tech, fintech. So one way of doing this could be through partnership in India. And the other thing is that there is in India, they are in short referred to as GCCs. We have over 1,800 GCCs. They function in the areas of finance, R&D, IT, digital transformation initiatives, product development. So in all these contexts, finance becomes a requirement. Uh, and develop the market. So the route I see is through partnerships. One can begin like that, and over time, if through some kind of a trade agreement, etc., you could actually have a far more open market. But to the extent you don't have the kind of trade agreement which does not allow you preferential treatment, the route in my mind is through partnerships, especially through fintech areas or through links with GCCs.
Thank you, Harsha. Creo que tenemos tiempo para una última pregunta.
I think we have time for the last question. I see Ignacio Bartesagui is raising his hand. My question is very short. Thank you, Henry, because this is something that we are commenting a lot in Norway. I wanted to know your opinion about this topic because the data is a success story in Latin America. And I would like to say how this important is this for the rest of the countries of Latin America and the importance that it has for the government to say this is a success story and why shouldn't we replicate elsewhere in order to attract the investments from India and the potential it can have for the future. So I would like to know how much this is a good example. The Tata um, endeavor is important for the rest of the countries. I can give you my opinion about the group, not as a state policy, but the group itself has a very successful experience in Latin America. As I said before, the most important thing has been this link between talents in India that has been brought to the region and has trained and educated our practitioners. Obviously, the group is now interested in different areas as a result of the experience we have been going through. In the last 20 years, LAC has gone through different governments, administrations, different political trends. And Uruguay is one of the major examples in this regard. In the economic stability and the support of the government of Uruguay to our industry has been fundamental. So, as our Latin American countries open the doors and supported the foreign investment, I think that the things that will be facilitated, and the world is requiring today a lot of energy in Latin America through lithium, copper has a lot to offer, a lot to leverage, and it's still very interesting as a marketplace. So I see a lot of initiatives from our group to continue investing in Latin America.
Just
Thank you very much, Henry, and I will conclude now this panel of discussions. Thank you very much to our panelists, Harsha, Cecilia, and our commentators, Miguel Angel, and Henry, and Sergio. I take it over to you now. Well, thank you. And to formally conclude this session, we invited the Executive Secretary of ECLAC to offer some opening remarks. Thank you, Sergio. Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much, all those who have been accompanying us in this working session. I would like to particularly thank the panelists, the commentators. Thank you very much for your clarity in the analysis and for the strategical sense that you have displayed. And this seminar has confirmed that the relationship between Latin America and India has much more space to grow, and there is a consensus on this to diversify itself and to become more relevant for the development. And this is going to occur anyway. But I think that the actions and the strategic vision can facilitate this process and to make it more beneficial rather than leaving that spontaneously developing. So India would become the third or the second market for some of the countries in LAC or for some very important sub-regions of Latin America and the Caribbean. But the potential is in terms of the trade and the exchange, but it's also, India is also a technological power. We spoke about software, the digital revolution, the communications, healthcare, the critical minerals, agriculture, the spatial industry, and this is a listing that was read by Harsha. And the minister of India has not even seen that as a whole in Latin America, and therefore there is a reason to have a shared vision between the two regions in regards to these important assets and the opportunities. So with these spaces and opportunities, not only in the trade area, but in the investment area and technologies, and also by developing cultural contacts where there is a wealth from both sides. And I was impressed by the piece of information that was given by Ignacio Batesaye, that is the first, for the first time in the history of Uruguay, a president of his country will go to India. And I think that this is a very important indicator of what we're living, as you mentioned that, and also the recognition of the strategic role that India plays today. In the first session, we had a presentation by Harry and also the reflection of Mrs. Layton and Mrs. Amparicio, who allowed us to have it in a wider context of the structural changes. Thank you very much for that context and the depth of to understand India better, that is a universe per se. In the second session, we have the different contributions and the comments that shed some lights about the opportunities, the concrete opportunities out there, the historical perspective with the data available. And now I would like to take out for cross-cutting ideas from this session. First of all, that the relationship between Latin America and India is moving forward, but it's done in a fragmented manner. The sectoral lanes are improving quickly or more slowly, but the idea is that it's still concentrated in just a few areas and a few countries. And there is, however, a huge knowledge gap, and there are very opportunities to improve from both sides. But to this end, we need to have knowledge, the joint strategy, as it was expressed. Also, Latin America and India are universes with a lot of information context, but also we need to have this strategic outlook in order to accelerate what we want to speed up. So we are very satisfied as ICLA to organize this event, and we expect to play a facilitating role in the future. We harbor this dream, and we will have the entrepreneurial conclave that is organized by the CII in India, and from India we will be very close to this initiative to coordinate the efforts. We're clear that there are new rivalries around sectors, industries, and specific technologies in the region. We will not be able to develop the policies of productive development, and this is something that we are inserting in the new countries, newcomers who will not be able to develop these policies that are effective without having an in-depth understanding of the new competitive technologies in the world, and this includes India. We have to build up the capabilities because it was not the tradition, including the capabilities of commercial strategy, and this will means to improve the economic diplomacy, because the traditional one in Latin America is very traditional. So we have to redevise it in the light of all the new realities. Either we have an alignment, active non-alignment, as the ambassador was saying here, or another strategy in mind. It is indispensable to have this capability. If we want to transform the opportunities and results, we need to have a mechanism to reduce these distances and to understand better the productive structure of India that is very complex, even with this territorial perspective. And even in Latin America, this is very complex. The policy instruments, the institutional framework. And once again, there are many gaps to bridge. And fourthly, it was expressed very strongly the idea that we need to have a component of diversification. That means strengthening the relationships with India to reach more partners, to open new spaces of cooperation, reducing the vulnerabilities and allowing to speed up our growth, and also learning how to do things in a different manner. To conclude, I think we have fulfilled the main objective, that is to say, to have this high level strategic dialogue is putting the foundations for further construction. I would like to highlight 2 points. We're going to prepare, first of all, a summary, taking the main ideas and the different guidance that was expressed here, and we'll have a document that will include the 3 previous distributed documents, and they will be uploaded in the website of ICLAC. And this event allowed to join different actors, players from the academia, from the private sector, that share the development of this cooperation age agenda. And we will continue to discuss with you on how to further reinforce this mechanism. We will continue at ICLAC facilitating this process, and we will contribute with our inputs. And the exchange today confirms that there is a very solid foundation upon we can build. Additionally to the acknowledgement, I would like to thank Sergio Rivero, who works with me directly at the executive secretariat, and I commissioned him to set this up, and he has made a very marvelous job. And I would like to thank all the colleagues who helped us at ICLAC. I would like to thank the interpreters, and I would like to thank Harry Hajagi. It's a very difficult to pronounce my family name, but yours is even harder. Cecilia Plotier for the documents that were developed, produced, and they will be uploaded at the website. Thank you very much, Ambassador Joshi, for your support, for your excellent and enlightening presentation at the beginning, and for staying with us till the end of the event. This shows your commitment, and this encourages us to continue in this endeavor. And we will further discuss this about the way ahead. And we'll conclude with the conviction if we want to diversify widen our options and our insertion internationally in this new context. India need to be part of the equation. It's a very important part for all the countries of Latin America and the Caribbean. The inputs we have come up with are an important step in this journey. Thank you very much. Thank you, Executive Secretary, and all who have been with us today here in the room and virtually participating. We would like to acknowledge sincerely, before concluding, we would like to say that the concept documents will be hosted at the website of ICLAC, as well as the summary of the seminar. As the executive secretary said, it will be uploaded there. So we'll conclude now this seminar. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Un minuto me atrasé. Ah, you know, it's a privilege.